Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today is kind of a special day because it is Alloimmunization and HDFN Awareness Day. So I thought it would be the perfect day to share my son's story and everything that we went through. I have spent the good part of the morning collecting all of the facts and everything that we went through and dates and times and everything so that I can properly share, because memory is a bit of a fickle thing. And with my pregnancy, I realized that I was very much stuck on fight or flight mode the entire time. So it was very difficult, very traumatizing. I'm gonna try not to cry, but I can't guarantee anything. Oh, I already had to pause it and take a moment because it was a lot. Not knowing what was going on and being so unsure was really hard, which yeah, it was just really difficult to know what's going on, and knowing that your body is the source of your child's, well, suffering, basically. I mean, we didn't know if he was gonna make it. We didn't know if he would be okay or what was gonna happen. This is gonna be a difficult video to get through. But for me, it is important to share his story and to talk about. I've talked about bits and pieces here and there on my private Facebook page, but I have not really publicly talked about everything that we went through. I had an amazing support system, absolutely phenomenal. I had so many people praying for me that I genuinely, physically felt it. It was so surreal and so healing during that. Okay, I'm back. I had to take a moment and reset. So yeah, Canaan's pregnancy was hard. Starting that off right off the bat. After his pregnancy, I actually did seek out therapy, and that was amazing in so many ways. I absolutely adore my therapist, and she has been an amazing support person. But I had so many people reaching out and checking in, praying for us, and just overall just being there for us. And it was incredible, the amount of faith that I gained through that experience. So I don't feel like we lost anything through this experience. It was hard, don't get me wrong, but we gained so much good, including an amazing rowdy little boy who I absolutely adore. He makes me want to pull my hair out some days, but he's wonderful. I'm sure you guys can hear them playing in the background, which is just a fact of life as a mom of two kids. And I've learned to accept the chaos and the mess, because that's a beautiful part of having a family. I am going to get into it. I took some notes so I could make sure I didn't miss anything, because there was a lot going on. It started fairly early on when they started taking tests and stuff like that. So they were checking titers and stuff like that, which is basically just tells them how much of my antibody level is, or how much antibodies I have in my blood. And they did reach a critical titer, so that means that I was referred to an MFM, which is just a specialist for pregnancy and everything for high-risk moms. And from there, I was 32 weeks, I believe. Yes, 32 weeks when I got my first IUT, which is an in utero blood transfusion. So up until that point, I was having weekly MCA scans, which is just a specialized ultrasound that they do. They take the scan right over the brain, and there's a vein that they track or measure with a special computerized system. I don't pretend to even know how that works. But that spits out a number, and from that number, they're able to tell, okay, is the baby anemic? Is he okay? Does he need a transfusion? And that's kind of the basis where our pregnancy took off from there and got really, really complicated really, really fast. So we got our first IUT in Chicago. Um, Incredible doctor there, absolutely adored him. He gave me his personal cell phone number and wanted updates on how the baby was doing, pictures of the baby after he was born. I mean, they were just amazing. I mean, my MFM had called me 7 o'clock at night to, give me instructions on, hey, this is what's happening, this is what's going on, we need you to be here, I want you to do a stress test at the hospital because I'm worried about the baby. Like, the doctors were insanely supportive and incredible as far as care and support goes. Most of them, anyway. Pregnancy side of it, they were amazing. We did have some hiccups with a few other doctors later on, but I will get into that yet. The doctor was able to give 50 cc's of blood, which brought him up to about 50-60% of what he was supposed to have, which tells you as far as how low he had gotten. So he was pretty low as far as the anemia and everything goes. And then it was almost 34 weeks is when he got his second one, which they were able to give 80 cc's then, so he got even more, which was amazing. I was very happy that they were able to give him more then. So he had 2 IUTs, which are the in utero transfusions. And then from there, he was born. He was born about 5 weeks early. I think it was like 4 weeks and some odd days or something like that, but it was very close to 5 weeks. So that's kind of what I go by. He did really well as far as being a preemie. He did not need heat. He did not need oxygen. He did need the feeding tube just because of, his strength and not being able to nurse right away. But even that, once we were able to start, he took off like an absolute champ and gained weight like crazy and did just absolutely amazing. We were in the hospital for about 2 weeks. I stayed with him. I don't think I left the room for anything. I think I left maybe twice. Once for a little event where we painted some onesies, which was really fun to meet some of the other moms and hear their stories. And one other time, I think we went down. They have a tree on a balcony. Their NICU is amazing. The setup is almost like an apartment. Like, you get to stay there the entire time. You have your own shower. You have your own restroom. I loved it because I'm a very clingy mom. Especially in situations like that, I don't like seeing my kids in pain. I don't like leaving their side. So, yeah, it was nice being able to just stay there and not have to worry about him at all. My mom had my oldest, so I knew she was being taken care of very well and probably way too spoiled, knowing my mom. But we would video chat all the time, and yeah, it was a crazy experience. When he was first born, he had very high jaundice levels, which is a byproduct of HDFN. And that's just the byproduct of still having my antibodies in his blood system. The antibodies continue to destroy the baby's blood until his body is able to work those antibodies out. So that's what was going on after he was born. That's why it continued to be an issue for a short period. When he was 3 days old, they finally went from 3 lights, which is the bilirubin lights, to 1 light and the blanket. So he still had to have the blanket and 1 more light. They left it on for 1 more day. She said technically he was under the threshold, like just under the threshold of where they would treat jaundice, but because of his condition, they wanted to give him just an extra day just to make sure that all works out, because bilirubin levels got really, really high there for a while. And then the next day, so day 4, he was able to not have any lights. I got to hold him all the time. I started being able to nurse him all the time, which was super exciting for me. And then it came to about right before we left, everything was going great. So right around the time when we were about to be discharged, and like they were like, yeah, we can go home, that we just want to do one more set of labs, and that's when his hemoglobin levels had dropped again, and that was the lowest they had been, so we knew he needed a transfusion before we went home. So they were trying to get a vein, and every time they would get one, they would go to flush the vein and the line and everything, get everything prepped for the transfusion. The vein would blow because he had very, very weak veins because of the anemia. It took them 17 tries to finally get a vein that stuck. The nurses were, again, absolutely incredible. I have zero complaints and all of the praises for them, because they checked on me, they gave him breaks, they did everything that they possibly could to try and make sure I was okay and that he was okay and he was going to get what he needed. So yeah, we got the transfusion done. He had, of course, he blew the vein in the middle of it. He only had, I believe it was 2.5 cc's left to get. So they were like, you know what, he's topped off. At least most of the way. He got 90% of it. We're gonna leave it, and we'll see how he does and go from there. So they didn't try to get another vein for the last little bit. There was no point in making him go through that again, just for the last 2.5 cc's. But yeah, we got to go home that next day. Then they kind of monitored him, made sure he was still nursing well, and then we got to go home, and he finally got to meet his sister and his grandparents, and it was such an amazing feeling, and also anxiety inducing, because at the hospital you have all the monitors, you can see his heartbeat, you can see his oxygen, an alarm would go off, if something went awry or anything, but at home you had none of that. So it was a little bittersweet being home, which I was not expecting at all to even deal with, because I was like, oh, we're finally home. I wanted to get out of the hospital so bad. But then not having those crutches was a little, oh, you know. Um, so that kind of took me out of left field as far as what I struggled with. But again, I was in fight or flight mode 100% of this time, so I didn't recognize much of my struggles, because I was just so amped up and anxious in general that I was just like, okay, what's next? I was so focused on, okay, what's the next step of the plan? Whew. So we got to go home. And then 11 days after he was born, he had to have, that was his first transfusion. Then that one lasted 18 days. So 18 days after that transfusion, he had his second transfusion. We were doing weekly blood draws, so a lot. I had an amazing tech that drew his blood, and she was, she practically became family. She was incredible. I adored her. We asked for her specifically every week because we had an incident before with another one that did not go well at all. She actually ended up encouraging me to report her because it went so badly. And I am not the type. I hate confrontation. I hate complaining. I hate all of that. So that was a lot for me to even get to that point. So that speaks volumes as far as that situation goes. The second one lasted 27 days, which was super encouraging. We were super excited, and I was very hopeful. But then he did need a third, and then that one only lasted 11 days. So then we needed a fourth. And then from there, it was 70 days that we continued to check every week. and his numbers didn't drop, and they started to slowly rise on their own, which is super encouraging. I did push for a few extra checks just to make sure that he did, in fact, get to where he needed to be. And he did. He finally got his graduation and his all clear from the condition, from HDFN, and from there, um, a week later he ended up having seizures, but that was unrelated, and that ended up, he grew out of it. It was nothing serious. So thankfully for that, I think for the first year and a half, 2 years, I was on fight or flight mode, very anxious, and my body was completely dysregulated. So, but that was his story. He went through a lot. We call him our little fighter man because he fought. He had to fight really hard to be here. But yeah, that was basically the quick version of his story. We did have some issues with a few doctors. There was a hematologist who had no clue on the condition, and had a lot of pushback from him as far as treatment goes. And there were a few times that I really had to push to have his transfusions the day that we had them. I knew how vital it was and how fast his levels were dropping, and the doctors sometimes just didn't understand how quickly that was happening. So there were a few times that I really had to advocate for him and push back and really have a spine, which again, I don't like confrontation at all. So that was a big deal, but this was not about me. This was about my child and getting the care that he needed. So I very, very willingly did it. Um, he's a great kid, and you know, seeing your kid lay there, your tiny baby, um, and not be able to do much about it, and then have doctors tell you information that you know is wrong, um, is really difficult. I think that's the biggest struggle with having such a rare condition is sometimes the doctors don't know, and some doctors are just not willing to learn. And there have been some that have been absolutely amazing, don't get me wrong. Um, there have been a lot that really helped us advocate and push to the right support systems and the right information, which was amazing, because without that, I truly don't know where we would be without it. But yeah, that was Canaan's story, and from here on out, I will be documenting Ezekiel's story, which is the pregnancy that I am in now. We are pregnant with our third. I'm very excited. I am a little nervous. Yeah, we're very excited. I feel a lot more prepared for this one than I did with Canaan, because I was learning everything in the midst of it. I'm back in therapy because I knew it would be difficult, and it has been. Not as difficult, I think. Difficult in a different way is a better way of saying that, than with Canaan. I feel like I'm better prepared and I have the knowledge that I need for Ezekiel's. But yeah, that is our story, and I will hopefully be from here on out documenting this current pregnancy and taking you through what it looks like in a more detailed way. So I will see you guys next time. Bye.